U.S. President Donald Trump tells African leaders he will send an envoy to South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Harnessing the potential of Africa's young people by mainstreaming youth participation in the continent's toughest challenges. And a colony of rare seahorses thrives in an unexpected place. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump says the United States is deeply disturbed by and closely monitoring ongoing violence in a number of African countries. Trump spoke Wednesday at a luncheon with African leaders on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Africa has tremendous business potential and represents huge amounts of different markets for American firms, Trump told the African leaders from a number of countries, including Ivory Coast, Namibia, Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa. He promised to send the United States UN ambassador to Africa to help in mitigating the various conflicts.
We're closely monitoring and deeply disturbed by the ongoing violence in South Sudan and in the Congo. Millions of lives are at risk, and we continue to provide humanitarian assistance. But real results in halting this catastrophe will require an African-led peace process and the sincere, really sincere commitment of all parties involved. And I know you're working on that, and you're working on that very hard. To assist in these efforts, I'm sending Ambassador Nikki Haley to Africa to discuss avenues of conflict and resolution, and most importantly, prevention. Africa has tremendous business potential. I have so many friends going to your countries trying to get rich.
Well, President Trump congratulated the leaders on the fast pace of economic growth in many regions of Africa. Now, supporting the spirit of United Nations reforms, Rwandan President Paul Kagame is urging world leaders to address global challenges. In his annual address to the General Assembly Wednesday, Kagame said the United Nations must treat all people with impartiality and respect and be a good steward of the funds entrusted to the world body. He also noted that the Secretary General Antonio Guterres deserves the full support of its members to make the UN more effective.
We have the tools and the mandates to address the global challenges of our day, from climate change to peace building to human equality and development. Where we fall short is in getting things done. Institutional reform is not a one-off event, like applying a fresh coat of paint. The essence of reform is a mindset of constantly striving to improve performance and delivery and holding ourselves responsible for shortcomings and results.
Now, for more on the UNGA, viewers, Margaret Bashir joins me live from the United Nations. Margaret, a lot happening there, but some big news that actually will be of interest to Africans. Tell us.
Yeah. You know, Vincent, I feel like I'm the harbinger of doom and gloom all the time when I come on your show, but today there's actually really good news out of the United Nations, and it's for the 37 million people living with HIV around the world. UNAIDS has announced that there will be new high-quality antiretroviral drugs, the ARVs, new therapy launched in South Africa, Kenya, and 90 other low and middle-income countries. And so what it is instead of taking 18 pills a day, which is what HIV patients take, instead of taking 18 pills a day, they'll be taking 1 pill a day, and it will cost $75 per year for the treatment. So something much more affordable for people living in low and middle income countries. So it's a huge breakthrough, big announcement from UNAIDS today. I had an opportunity to sit down with Dr. Michel Sidibe, who's the executive director. He was very excited about it, and he said this means that they'll be able to reach many, many more people with drugs for the same amount of money that they had before. So they don't need a budget increase because they've had this great breakthrough in the drug pricing, and it's all part of a private and public partnership with countries and with foundations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Clinton Health Initiative. So they're very excited about it here at the UN today.
Now, and it's good you say they're very excited there, the UN, because many times the political stories, the many conflicts of the world seem to overwhelm so many of the other good things that are happening. To what extent are countries recognizing this big announcement today by Dr. Sidibe?
Well, we had the South African health minister at a news conference earlier, and he said that they will be reaching, it's a big deal for them. They have almost 4 million people on these antiretroviral drugs in South Africa now, and that in the year 2000, they only had 90 people, 90 on antiretroviral drugs, and now they have nearly 4 million. So it's just these sorts of breakthroughs really help treat people, and it's going to help eliminate the battle to eliminate HIV and AIDS.
Now that we're in a cheerful mood in a few seconds, what else can you tell us in the coming days perhaps we can expect that is positive coming out of the UN?
Well, I'm afraid that was about it. We're going to have more on North Korea today at the United Nations, so that's the end of the good news.
I don't know how cheerful that is. Margaret, thank you very much.
Thanks, Vincent.
All right, that's Margaret Bashir, VOA's Margaret Bashir reporting from the United Nations. Now, for all of your UN General Assembly news, be sure to follow Margaret on Twitter at @mbashir. Now to Africa. On the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly, VOA's Peter Clottey sat down for a wide-ranging interview with outgoing Liberian President Ellen Johnson. She spoke about what she considers to be her legacy after 10 years in power.
The legacy of having taken a destroyed country, give it peace, maintain peace, for over, if we include the interim period, over 15 consecutive years, as compared with 30 years of conflict, of war, of destruction. And in the process, on the basis of that peace, restored basic services to the Liberian people, those services missing over many years, you know, built the institutions that were largely dysfunctional over many years. I'd like to say it's a great legacy.
Now, the future of the 2015 Iran nuclear weapons deal is being widely discussed by leaders of the United Nations General Assembly. As VOA's Margaret Bashir reports, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is adamant that the agreement is not renegotiable. But US President Donald Trump said Wednesday he has already decided, but not yet revealed, whether to pull the America out of the multilateral agreement.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani told world leaders that the nuclear deal belongs to the entire international community, not just one or two countries.
I declare before you that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not be the first country to violate the agreement, but it will respond decisively and resolutely to its violation by any party. It will be a great pity if this agreement were to be destroyed by rogue newcomers to the world of politics. The world will have lost a great opportunity. But such unfortunate behavior will never impede Iran's course of progress and advancement.
Rouhani's barb was directed at President Trump, who told leaders the day before that the deal to keep Iran from developing nuclear weapons in exchange for lifting economic sanctions was one of the worst transactions the U.S. ever entered into.
Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me.
President Trump said Wednesday he has made a decision on the Iran deal.
Have you decided to stay or to leave?
Well, I have decided.
Okay. Can you tell us what your decision is?
I'll let you know. I'll let you know.
The other 5 powers involved in the lengthy negotiations want to keep the deal intact.
Renouncing it would be a grave error. It would be irresponsible for us to fail to uphold that agreement, because this is a good agreement, an agreement that's essential to peace. at a time when a downward spiral cannot be discounted.
At a news conference, President Rouhani reaffirmed that Iran also does not want the deal to fail and insisted no changes can be made to it.
This is a building from the frame of which, if you take off a single brick, the entire building will collapse.
But he warned a U.S. withdrawal would completely change the equation.
If anyone exits this agreement and breaks the commitments of the agreement and violates this agreement, it means that our hand is completely open to take any action that we see as beneficial to our country.
With the risk of the deal unraveling, leaders are continuing their outreach in New York to the Trump administration to keep it intact. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
In East Africa, election news. Kenya's election board revealed via tweet on Thursday that the nation's presidential rerun has been rescheduled for October the 26th. The announcement comes just one day after a detailed Supreme Court judgment laid out the reasons why the court had declared last month's poll null and void. The rerun election had been initially scheduled for October the 17th, but the opposition party had pushed for a later date. The Constitution dictates the poll take place within 60 days of the Supreme Court's ruling, which is October 31st. Incumbent Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner of the nullified August 8th election, defeating opposition leader Raila Odinga by 1.4 million votes. Well, in Uganda, a rally by demonstrators in Kampala was broken up by police who fired tear gas at the protesters. Now, the group had gathered to march towards Parliament to protest against draft legislation that could extend President Yoweri Museveni's rule. Students at Makerere University had assembled to start marching just before police dispersed them with tear gas. A police spokesman said they will not allow demonstrators to hold protest marches. Now, the move to amend the Constitution is being met by widespread resistance from activists, civil society organizations, religious leaders, and even some members of the 73-year-old Museveni's own ruling party. Museveni is ineligible to stand for re-election in 2021 as Constitution sets age ceiling for presidential candidates at 75. Well, now we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now, coming up, harnessing the power of Africa's demographic dividend. Stay with us.
News and notes. This is Living Better.
It's an experimental device that could help cancer surgeons and their patients. Researchers at the University of Texas have developed a so-called cancer pen that analyzes molecular fingerprints to distinguish between cancer cells and healthy ones. As surgeons remove cancerous tissue, it's important for them to know they're getting it all. That process can involve long delays while a patient is sedated as doctors wait for biopsy results from pathologists working with microscopes in real time. Enter the cancer pen. The device in the surgeon's hand pulls in and analyzes molecules in tissue areas in under a minute, allowing the surgeon to know right away if it's necessary to keep cutting or when to stop. In lab tests with hundreds of patients, the cancer pen detected cancer cells correctly 96% of the time. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
Well, it's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu with the latest news on tackling non-communicable diseases. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. In a new report, the World Health Organization says governments must step up efforts to control non-communicable diseases to meet the globally agreed target of preventing the premature death of millions of people from these conditions by 2030. The NCD's Progress Monitor found that limited national progress has been made in the fight against NCDs, primarily cardiovascular and chronic respiratory diseases, cancers, and diabetes. These are the world's biggest killers, claiming the lives of 15 million people aged 30 to 70 years annually. The WHO says the Progress Monitor provides data on 19 indicators in all of WHO's 194 member states. The report shows that 93 countries have set national targets to address NCDs, up from 59 in 2015. It says 6 countries have not achieved any of the progress indicators compared to 14 in 2015, 5 of which are African.
The healthy future of our planet is very, very much determined as well too on the successful outcomes of the measures that are included in this little book. In order for the world's community to reach what is known as the Sustainable Development Goal target for 2030 of reducing 1/3 the total premature deaths from NCDs by 2030, much more progress will need to be made by the world's community. That's a main message that's contained in this publication.
The countries that have made the best progress in the global scorecard are those that have a strong political commitment to implement the most effective strategies to address NTDs. And they include tobacco taxes, restrictions on availability of alcohol, and policies to prevent the marketing of unhealthy food products to children.
And the WHO says countries should consider their score, how to improve it, and consider implementation of the best buys to prevent and control NCDs. Now, the demographic dividend is the economic growth potential that can result from shifts in a population's age structure. The United Nations Population Fund says countries with the greatest demographic advantages for development are those entering a period in which the working age population will have a low proportion of young dependents and the benefits of good health. Among other things, youth are about half of the population of sub-Saharan Africa. Population observers say ensuring the well-being of young people in Africa is critical, and tackling diseases like HIV/AIDS are some key steps to ensuring their well-being. Globally, demographic dividend is pivotal for achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. A high-level dialogue will take place this Friday at the United Nations headquarters in New York City on strengthening partnership with the private sector to accelerate the demographic dividend. Joining us live via Skype from the United Nations in New York for more is Mabenge Ngam, UNFPA Regional Director for the West Africa and Central Africa region. Mr. Ngam, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
So a high-level meeting is scheduled tomorrow to look into the demographic dividend. Can you tell us about what is on the agenda?
Well, thank you very much. I think the entire idea of the dialogue we will have tomorrow here in New York is all about bringing the top leaders of the continent with the private sector, the business sector, and young people to engage on this very issue of the demographic dividend. So it's about making sure that the private sector is not left behind as we engage the entire actors, to support the 2030 agenda. As you know, we will not be able to make progress on achieving the 2030 agenda or making similar progress with regard to the Africa we want or Agenda 2063 unless we harness the demographic dividend and make sure that, Africa banks on its youthful population.
So, Mr. Ngam, a lot of people still have difficulty grasping the concept of the demographic dividend. Some people even think that it's population control. What can you tell us about this and the simplest way? How do we understand this?
No, I think we have made a lot of progress in terms of popularizing and domesticating the concept of demographic dividend. Of course, it's not about population control. It's not also...
Yes, go ahead.
No, it's not about population control. It's not about limiting the number of children women will have, but it's all about making sure that we have conducive policies that are convergent, that will help, family enjoy a better life, but also help, governments, and all partners, I think, to enjoy a better life.
So what are some of the key drivers in achieving the demographic dividend, and to what extent is health an important part of this?
No, I think the key drivers are, as you rightly said, health, education, employment, but also good governance. Health, because no country will be able to harness the demographic dividend unless you experience what we call, an accelerated demographic transition that is all about, a decrease in maternal mortality, decrease in infant mortality that will help, bring down the number of children women will have. If you achieve this progress, step forward, you will be able to enjoy, kind of saving that might be used for investment, and this will allow, communities to be, in a position to create jobs, to provide services to the population, but also to make sure that, the public expenditure related to the social demand are much lower, so they can invest more in the quality of services. So the improvement of the well-being of communities, of individuals and families will follow that process.
And how does the private sector come in?
Well, as I said, it's really a very ambitious enterprise. And a good example is what happened in Asia, some years ago. They got between 1/3 and 1/2 of their growth from investment in harnessing the demographic dividend. So such an enterprise cannot be achieved unless you have very strong partnership with religious leaders, a partnership with young people themselves, partnership with government inside countries. So you understand why we need to have the private sector, not only because of the fiscal space additional at present, but also their knowledge and their ability to get things done. So by bringing the private sector on board, I think we will ensure that we have a greater leverage, we have a greater learning opportunity, and we have, a greater potential in terms of making sure that we get where we should be by 2030.
So before we wrap, what will it take to achieve the goal by 2030?
Well, I would say that it will require investment in health, especially family planning. This is important. Second, we need to make, greater progress in terms of gender equality, because no country, no society, no community can make progress if half or more than half of the population is left behind or not treated properly. Number three, you will need also to invest in education, greater education, especially girl education. And as I alluded before, you will need also to have much better governance, much better policy environment, so that you can have a convergence around all of the many sectors that will have to move in this same.
Okay, Mr. Mabengengam.
So we can enjoy the demographic dividend in Africa.
Thank you so much. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And that was Mabengengam. He is UNFPA Regional Director for the West Africa and Central Africa region. And that's all for our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @Lenore. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. Now be sure to watch Lenore Mudu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday, right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, South African housing development becomes a home to rare seahorses. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. In Venezuela, an increasing number of patients have turned to traditional healers. With triple-digit inflation and medication shortages, leaving everything from simple anti-inflammatory drugs to chemotherapy out of reach for most Venezuelans, business for traditional healers has taken off across the country. Known as curanderos, Latin American traditional healers employ a great variety of techniques, from giving massages or offering prayers to prescribing herbs, teas or salves to their patients. But doctors' professional associations reject the trend, saying more must be done to increase the nation's drug supply. Now, next up, a new furniture and homeware company wants to make use of one of the world's most abundant resources, trash. From plastic bottles to old DVDs and discarded mobile phones, Pentatonic is turning raw material into new furniture. The first of their products includes glassware made from the screens of old smartphones and desk chairs made from recycled plastic. Now, Pentatonic has partnered with Starbucks UK to turn its plastic coffee cups, lids and Frappuccino cups into furniture for its outlets. More than 9 billion tons of plastic has been produced since 1950, with most of it discarded in landfills, damaging ecosystems and human health. And finally, in a small town in South Africa's Garden Route coastline, conservation is being turned upside down. Environmentalists who were opposed to a marina development 20 years ago are now supporting the project after discovering that it's hosting a colony of rare seahorses. Knysna Lagoon is one of only 3 estuaries in South Africa's southern Cape Coast where the Knysna seahorse can be found, the only endangered seahorse in the world. Conservationists hope to find out exactly why the seahorse is doing so well in these man-made marinas, and that is what is trending today. Well, and that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A cannon used to be a common military weapon.
Loose cannon.
So, are Anna and Jonathan talking about an old battle?
Hey, I'm looking for someone to host a political event tomorrow night. Can your friend Sylvia help out?
Sylvia? She's a loose cannon. You never know what she's going to say. She could easily